Well, hi there, friends. This is Emily Windsor Craig, and it is Friday, the 18th of December, 2020. And in my meditative life, I've been getting the tap on the shoulder because, as you know, I have kind of a distant relationship with the church where I am now. I am a Christian. I can tell you the day that I gave my life to Jesus Christ when I was 6 years old, 1950, on the Venice Boardwalk in Venice, California. I remember that day perfectly. And I was baptized a couple of times by the Methodists in the Methodist Church, Reverend Franklin Scott in 1961, and as a witness of Jehovah in 1965 in California. And I was confirmed in the Episcopal Church in 1978 by James Miles was the pastor, and it was a Bishop Lewis. Okay, so I've taken my relationship to the church very seriously all these years. And I'm having a problem continuing to discuss and talk about, interact with the topic of church because it appears to have gotten stuck on a sidetrack. All right. As you know, I like the mud flood people and Martin Leideke and John Levi and New Earth. I look into ancient histories, and I have spoken about how the Bible story is actually part of a larger backstory that even Jews, even Orthodox Jews, Hasidic Orthodox Jews, and contemplative Christian mystics don't deal with. They don't deal with the backstory. And I've had a problem with that because unless you know what the backstory is, you don't know why events are occurring now to correct what went wrong. Okay, the backstory, according to the Alanu Treaty, is that this world was captured and utilized as a prison planet for the whole past dispensation, okay, under the Alanu Treaty, which allowed that superior races should dominate and cull inferior races. And that treaty ended December the 21st, 2012. And a new dispensation began under the Age of Aquarius, in which the prime directive, do no harm and don't interfere in other cultures, became operative. But the church doesn't know about this. Why doesn't the church know what's going on in the astrological schedule of civil events that has been preordained going back who knows how many eons? Why doesn't the church know about this? All right, now particularly there are Orthodox churches who follow the stated intentions of Scripture very seriously. They believe that when God gave us holy law in the Pentateuch, that what he was doing was defining the behaviors that constitute a civil society. And as you know, I keep putting up my little summary of holy law because I take that holy law seriously as a guideline for civil behavior. If you do good things, you get a good outcome. And if you refrain from doing things that cause harm, you get a good outcome. And if you make a mistake, you apologize and you fix the problem and you get back on the path to doing good. Okay. But the church hasn't done that either. I have never been in a Reformed church that taught the commandments, holy law, not just the first 10. Come on, the first 10 are generalizations. I mean, the whole thing. You do this and not that, you do this and not that, you do this and not that. And you need to know what it is. You need to know right from wrong. So the church has not taught the commandments that Jesus said in Matthew 5:16 through 21 that we are accountable for and obligated to follow. The church doesn't teach that. What does the church teach? Epistemology and homiletics, which means they only stay in a very few references on a single book. And I don't know of anybody who can say they're educated by only reading one book. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Now, there have been some deep divisions and fights in the church. And one is about Satanism and the other is about Luciferianism. And Satanism holds that the soul is more than the doctrine of the church, and that developing and strengthening the soul takes different inputs and outcomes than the church teaches. And so Satanism adopts cruelty. And I have a problem with that. It's, you know, they want to do that. What goes around comes around, and they are welcome to reap what they are sowing. I don't happen to believe in cruelty as a way of developing the soul. And Luciferianism, of course, as propagated by the Masonic order, is do what thou wilt, that there are no behavioral outcomes or guidelines for us that we need to follow. We can do whatever we want. Well, of course we can do whatever we want. And then we can reap the outcomes for doing whatever we want. You know, you want to create misery. All right, welcome it when it comes to you. Okay. And so I don't follow the Luciferian model of creating uproar and destruction and misery as a way of removing governance I don't happen to prefer. If you have become familiar with the Frankfurt School and Saul Alinsky and the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, you see that those are strategies that surreptitiously create conflicts in society in order to develop outcomes. Well, I've had enough of that, frankly. I'm not thrilled by the idea that I need to confront any more of that. Right. But in the meantime, the church, particularly the church that I technically belong to, the Anglican Church, you go to an Anglican site online and they are no longer discussing law in the Celtic terms that the prophet Jeremiah brought to Ireland in 583 BC, nor that Columba took to Scotland, or that God moved to London with the Stone of Scone in 1296 AD. No, the church is chasing after political correctness. And I guess the church can do that. But what I'm noticing is that the church is not serving the way the disciples and followers of Jesus served and operated. Okay. If you've read the Bible, you know that in Acts 1 and 2, the church consisted of a one-purse community in which everybody shared whatever they had with whoever was there. Okay, and they helped each other and they ate together and they were together. They were a community. They were not an imperial, nationalistic, socialist top-down nanny state. That's something else, okay? But a one-purse community is a lot like the charismatic convents and monasteries of the Catholic, Anglican, and Orthodox faiths, a lot like the Anabaptist, Amish, Hutterite, Mennonite communities. Okay, those are the places where Acts 1 and 2 get acted out. And in your local church, what they're doing is collecting money and paying out money and only dealing with money. Now, I have a neighbor, God bless her soul, who has a sick husband. This neighbor is a devotional Catholic woman who does all of the things correctly, okay? And she devotes her time and her resources to the church. And she's been struggling with a sick husband now for the 2.5 years I've known her. I have yet to see the Catholic priest from that parish come visit her and encourage her, or anybody from the parish pay her a visit or help her with something she has to do. Her husband is now being ministered to by California State Hospice. And I have watched her suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer, this devoted Catholic woman, despite the pretenses that the Catholic Church is there for her. The Catholic Church is not there for her. The Anglican Church has adopted doctrines around political correctness that belittle the commandments and teachings of both the law and Jesus Christ. They presume on abortion and sexual profligacy and druggery, and I don't see any efforts on their part to provide a place for their homeless or their poor or their people. And so I'm having a hard time taking the church seriously in where I live. Now, online, it's a different story. Online, we can now go to any church we want to. We can go anywhere. We can go out in the forest and sit among the redwood trees and listen to the birds, or we can go to the seashore and just listen to the waves, just listen to the surf. We can listen to John Rutter's hymns or Mennonite hymns. We can watch weddings. We can participate anywhere. We can go to Mass any day of the week. We can participate in morning prayer or Compline anytime we want to. There are always places where we can sit in adoration of God, okay? There's no obstacle to worshiping God in the world now. Do it from home. Do it from home. No, never mind. This is the 7th call today, and they're all spam calls. Okay. But the church is still operating from IRS regulation 501c3. And that means that they're busy counting up how much money you donated and whether you're participating in their money-based retirement program. Money is still the end all and the be all of their transactions. That's not how Jesus did it. And that's now not how I want to see it done personally. Okay, I have my preferences. I'm really impressed with the way that the Orthodox Church has transformed the nation of Russia. And I notice that in the media, who are bending over backwards to accuse Russia of all kinds of terrible things, like hacking into our computer system networks and being an enemy. You know, they're busy being an enemy. And yet, since the wall fell, Russia has built 35 new cathedrals devoted to the Orthodox worship of Almighty God. And they do not violate the commandment on representing people in pictures and statues. Everything is iconographic, all right? Iconic representation rather than physical, literal. They have not fallen for the doctrine, the Calvinist doctrine that says salvation is by faith and faith alone, and it doesn't matter how you behave, okay? In the Orthodox explanation for life, our behavior creates consequences, and we need to be aware of the consequences we are creating. And yes, let's go back to the scriptures and talk about each behavior that Jesus spoke in favor of and against, and let's take that as the entire tradition, not just one pope or one bishop or one teaching, but let's take things in context. I think that's wonderful. So I'm explaining here to my Christian friends why the Reformed Church, the Protestants, seem to be very shallow today. They seem to be exceedingly shallow, except for the Anabaptists. And why the Catholics seem to be very divided between those who follow the Pope versus don't follow the Pope. They're still simply embedded in division. Embedded in division. And I really deplore that idea that the church needs to be embedded in division. We need to protect the souls that are in our company. In the first century, that included devising the catacombs so that the members of the parishes could be free from the doctrination and repression of the Roman Empire. And today, we need to be free from the indoctrination and repression of the New World Order, because the New World Order is run off of that old Elanu Treaty that says there are superior races and inferior races that elites will dictate to. They still operate from the old fascist tyrannies. That's too bad. Let's not do that. So for those of you who are struggling with the churches rolling over and accepting treachery, protection rackets, and divide and conquer, which is the experiences that come with imperialistic legalistic and corporate renderings of law. What is holding me together is the faith that God is bigger than that the creation is bigger than that sacred geometry and prime number functions and chemistry and biochemistry and genetics are larger than the exercises that scientism is doing today to create a new scientistic society in which the creation is considered as garbage. Some people want to do that. And the people who want to do that believe what the mainstream media tell them. And they believe what the government vested agencies tell them. And they believe what the announcements say. Well, I don't. I don't believe that COVID is a fatal disease because the mortality tables, the mortality rate in the United States has not changed since last year or the year before. I don't believe that this election was conducted in an honest and correct, legally correct manner. I do not believe that Mr. Joe Biden, who's got a terrible reputation, is a president-elect. I don't believe that our country is limited by the reality that the media propound for us. And I don't believe that we are as limited as the church wants to tell us we are. Okay? So it's a matter of who you take seriously. Let it be like water off a duck's back. How does that go? We'll see you.